A wealthy CEO attends a summer party alone, shocked to see his ex-wife with kids who look like him. Their names are Gabriel, Luna, Sophia, and Dante. They're 15 years. Marcus's voice cracked as he stared at the four teenagers who shared his green eyes, his distinctive dimple, his very DNA. Valentina, why didn't you tell me there were four? Fire flashed in her dark eyes. I tried to tell you everything, Marcus. You were too busy building your empire to listen. Welcome, my beautiful family, to Lux Love Chronicles with Mr. Wentworth. We are currently at 23 subscribers, and we're growing together on this incredible journey of love, redemption, and second chances. I truly appreciate each and every one of you who chooses to spend your precious time with me. Before we dive into tonight's story, let me say a quick prayer for all of you. Heavenly Father, I lift up every person watching this video tonight. Bless them with peace in their hearts, strength for tomorrow's challenges, and the wisdom to recognize love when it appears in their lives. May they find joy in the simple moments and courage in the difficult ones. Amen. Now, let's begin this beautiful story about a man who thought he had everything, until he discovered what he'd truly lost. The morning sun cast long shadows across Marcus Reed's penthouse as he stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, surveying the city he'd conquered. At 38, he commanded a tech empire worth $12 billion, yet the silence of his glass tower felt more suffocating with each passing day. The reflection staring back at him showed a man who possessed everything money could buy, but nothing that truly mattered. His penthouse stretched across the entire top floor of downtown Seattle's most exclusive building. Italian marble floors gleamed under recessed lighting, while minimalist furniture that cost more than most people's annual salaries sat artfully arranged in perfect symmetry. Original paintings from galleries in Paris and New York adorned the walls, their price tags representing small fortunes. Yet for all its beauty and luxury, the space felt like a mausoleum, cold, pristine, and utterly devoid of life. His phone buzzed against the marble countertop, the sound echoing through the cavernous space. Another board meeting notification. Another acquisition opportunity requiring his immediate attention. Another chance to add meaningless zeros to his already astronomical net worth. Marcus swiped the notification away without reading it, something that would have been unthinkable just months ago. For the first time in 15 years, making money felt completely meaningless. Mr. Reed? The soft voice belonged to Mrs. Chen, his housekeeper, who'd arrived punctually at 8 a.m. with his morning coffee ritual. She was a small Korean woman in her mid-60s who'd worked for him for 3 years, maintaining his perfect, empty life with quiet efficiency. Your coffee, sir. Ethiopian single origin, prepared exactly as you prefer. And there's a manila envelope that was hand-delivered yesterday evening. I placed it on your desk as requested. Marcus nodded absently, wrapping his hands around the warm ceramic mug. The coffee was perfect, as always, but it tasted like ash in his mouth. Mrs. Chen, can I ask you something personal? She paused in her methodical arrangement of his morning newspapers, clearly surprised by the unprecedented request. In 3 years of employment, he'd never asked her anything beyond work-related instructions. Of course, Mr. Reed. How may I help you? Do you have family? Children? Grandchildren? Her weathered face transformed completely, softening with the first genuine smile he'd ever witnessed from her. Years seemed to fall away as her eyes lit up with unmistakable joy. Yes, sir. 3 grandchildren in Portland. 2 boys and a girl. They're 8, 10, and 12 years old. Tell me about them, Marcus said, surprising himself with how desperately he wanted to hear about normal family life. Mrs. Chen's entire demeanor changed, her professional composure melting into grandmother's pride. Oh, Mr. Reed, they're absolutely wonderful. Little Sarah just started violin lessons 2 months ago. She's so determined and focused, practices every single day, even when her tiny fingers hurt from the strings. She wants to play in the school orchestra next year. And the boys, Michael and David, they're both playing soccer now in the youth league. Every weekend I drive down to Portland to watch their games. They run to me after each match, completely grass-stained and grinning from ear to ear, and they tell me every single detail of what happened. That sounds absolutely beautiful, Marcus said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. It is, sir. They're my whole world, my reason for breathing. When I hold them in my arms, when I see their faces light up the moment I walk through the door. There's no feeling like it in the entire universe. No amount of money could buy what I feel when they tell me they love me. After she left, Marcus found himself staring at the manila envelope she'd mentioned. It had been sitting unopened on his mahogany desk for 2 full days. But something about this particular morning felt different. The return address showed it was from his elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson from the residential building just 2 doors down. He'd lived in this exclusive neighborhood for 5 years, yet he'd never spoken to any of his neighbors beyond polite nods in the hallway. His life existed in a carefully constructed bubble of board meetings, investor calls, and solitary evenings spent reviewing quarterly reports. Inside the envelope was a simple garden party invitation, written in elegant script on cream-colored cardstock. You're invited to celebrate my granddaughter Emma's high school graduation. Saturday evening, 6 p.m. Light refreshments provided. Hope to see you there. Please come. Life is too short to spend it alone. Your neighbor, Margaret Patterson. Marcus read the invitation 3 times, particularly lingering on that last line. Life is too short to spend it alone. When was the last time someone had cared enough about his obvious loneliness to reach out? The answer hit him like a physical blow. 15 years ago. Valentina had been the last person to truly see him as Marcus the man rather than Marcus the business opportunity, to worry about his isolation, to fight for their connection even when he'd been too terrified and ambitious to fight back. That evening 15 years ago, he'd made the worst decision of his entire life. She'd called him just as he was preparing for the most important investor presentation of his career, her voice shaking with fear and excitement. Marcus, I need to tell you something important. Something that changes everything for us. But instead of dropping everything to listen, he'd been distracted by funding projections dancing through his head. Valentina, the timing is absolutely terrible, he'd said, pacing his cramped startup office while shuffling through presentation slides. We're so incredibly close to securing series of funding. Johnson Industries wants to meet next week. And if we can just get through the next few months. The next few months? Her voice had broken in a way that should have stopped him cold. Marcus, I'm pregnant. This is our baby we're talking about. Our future as a family. I know, and I'm excited about it, really I am. But if I can just secure this funding round, we'll be set for life. We can have everything we ever dreamed of. All I've ever dreamed of is building a family with you, Marcus. That's all I've ever wanted. But he'd been 23 years old, terrified of failure, and absolutely convinced that success required sacrificing everything else. Maybe after the company goes public and we're financially stable, we can revisit starting a family. I'll send you money to take care of expenses. Make sure you're comfortable. The silence on the other end had lasted so long that he'd thought she'd hung up. Take care of me, she'd whispered finally, her voice hollow with devastation. Marcus, I don't need your money. I need you. I need the man who promised to love me forever. I do love you, more than anything. That's exactly why I'm doing this. To build something solid for us. You're not building anything for us, Marcus. You're building something for you, for your ego. And you're willing to tear us apart to do it. He'd hung up that night convinced he was making the mature, responsible choice. Within a week, she'd filed divorce papers. He'd signed them without contest, transferred a substantial sum to her account, and thrown himself into work with complete obsession. His company had indeed gone public. He'd made his first $100 million by 28, his first $1 billion by 32. But every success felt hollow without someone to share it with. Now, 15 years later, he was staring at an invitation from a stranger who'd noticed his loneliness and cared enough to try to fix it. Saturday evening arrived with golden light that photographers spend careers trying to capture. Marcus had changed clothes 4 times, settling on dark jeans and a casual blue blazer that his stylist assured him looked approachably elegant. He felt nervous in a way that billion-dollar deals never made him nervous. The walk to Mrs. Patterson's house took 3 minutes, but felt like 3 hours. His palms were sweating, heart racing like a teenager on a first date. When was the last time he'd been to any social gathering unrelated to business? The Patterson house was a charming 2-story brick home with ivy climbing the walls and flower boxes overflowing with petunias and marigolds. The front yard had been transformed into something from a fairy tale. String lights zigzagged between ancient oak trees, casting dancing shadows on the lawn where families mingled. Round tables covered in white linens were scattered across the grass, each adorned with mason jars filled with wildflowers. The scent of barbecue mixed with jasmine blossoms, creating an intoxicating perfume that spoke of home and belonging. Children's laughter rang out like music Marcus had forgotten existed. Couples held hands while teenagers clustered in animated conversations. Elderly neighbors sat in comfortable chairs, watching with contented smiles. It was everything his life wasn't: warm, connected, vibrantly alive. "Marcus, you actually came." Mrs. Patterson appeared beside him like a fairy godmother, her silver hair perfectly curled and blue eyes twinkling with delight. She was smaller than expected, barely reaching his shoulder, but her presence filled the space with warmth. "I wasn't entirely sure you'd received my invitation. Come, come. There are some lovely people here you must meet." As they walked through the garden, Mrs. Patterson introduced him to neighbors whose names he immediately forgot but whose kindness he'd remember forever. The elderly Mr. Rodriguez, who tended spectacular roses and insisted on sharing his fertilizer secrets. Sarah and Tom Wilson, a young couple with twin babies who kept falling asleep despite the noise. The Chin family, no relation to his housekeeper, whose teenage son had earned a full scholarship to the University of Washington. Everyone seemed genuinely pleased to meet him, asking about his work with polite interest, but more interested in sharing their own stories. When was the last time someone had talked to him as just Marcus rather than Marcus Reed, billionaire CEO? "Oh, there's someone very special I want you to meet," Mrs. Patterson said, tugging his arm toward the garden's back where roses climbed a wooden trellis. "Valentina just moved back to Seattle with her children. Lovely woman, and such beautiful kids. They remind me so much of..." Mrs. Patterson's voice faded as Marcus's world tilted on its axis. There, standing beside the rose trellis with her back to him, was a woman whose silhouette would be burned into his memory for eternity. Her auburn hair, longer now and touched with golden highlights, caught the setting sun like fire. She wore a flowing emerald dress that hugged curves he'd once known by heart. Valentina. She was laughing at something a young girl had said, her head thrown back in that unconscious way that had always made his heart skip. Her laugh was the same, musical, infectious, captivating. But there was something different now, an aura of confidence and grace that came from surviving hardships and emerging stronger. But it was the children surrounding her that made his heart stop completely. For teenagers, clearly siblings despite their different personalities, each bearing features that were hauntingly familiar. The eldest boy had Marcus's dark hair and the same intense green eyes he saw in the mirror each morning. One girl possessed his strong jawline beneath her mother's delicate features. Another shared his olive complexion and thick eyebrows. The youngest boy had his distinctive reed dimple. Marcus set down his wine glass with shaking hands, unable to process what he was seeing. 15 years ago, Valentina had called with news that would change everything. She'd been pregnant, scared, looking for support from the man who'd promised to love her forever. She'd tried to tell him everything in that phone call, but he'd been too consumed with investor presentations to really listen. He'd heard pregnant and immediately started calculating how parenthood would affect his startup's timeline. In his arrogance, he'd assumed she'd been pregnant with one child. He'd never known about the others, their others. Quadruplets. She'd been carrying quadruplets, and he'd walked away. "Mama, who's that man staring at us?" The youngest girl's voice carried across the garden, innocent but concerned. She had Valentina's delicate features, but Marcus's expressive eyes, looking directly at him with curiosity. Valentina followed her daughter's gaze, and their eyes met across 15 years of silence and regret. The world slowed down. Party noise faded to a distant hum. The wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the stone pathway as her face went pale. The sound echoed through the garden, drawing curious glances, but Marcus could only see her. She looked exactly as beautiful as in his memories, but completely different. The girl he'd left had been soft, uncertain, dependent on his strength. This woman had clearly learned to be her own strength, who'd raised 4 children alone and emerged victorious from battles he couldn't imagine. "Children," she said quietly, never breaking eye contact with Marcus, "go help Mrs. Patterson in the kitchen." Take some cookies to the other kids. But Mom, we were going to, the eldest boy protested. Now Gabriel. Her voice carried absolute authority, the voice of a mother who'd learned to command respect through love rather than fear. The teenagers looked between their mother and the stranger with obvious confusion, but they obeyed. Marcus watched his children, his children, walk away, their movements so familiar it was like watching pieces of himself he'd never known existed. Gabriel moved with Marcus's same purposeful stride. Luna had his habit of tucking hair behind her ear when nervous. Sophia possessed his tendency to analyze everything before acting. Dante walked with the same slight bounce that his mother had always teased Marcus about. Valentina approached slowly, her composure remarkable despite the tremor in her hands and voice when she spoke. "Hello, Marcus." Valentina. Her name felt foreign after so many years of silence, like speaking a language he'd forgotten. I saw the children." She nodded, tears threatening despite her efforts to maintain control. "Their names are Gabriel, Luna, Sophia, and Dante. They're 15. 15 years. 15 years of birthdays he'd missed, Christmas mornings without him, parent-teacher conferences where Valentina sat alone. 15 years of watching his children grow without him, explaining to 4 confused kids why their father had chosen work over family. "Why didn't you tell me there were 4? He whispered, his voice breaking. Fire flashed in her dark eyes, and he saw the passionate woman who'd never backed down from a fight. "I tried to tell you everything, Marcus. You were too busy building your empire to listen. You made it clear that I was an inconvenience, that our family was a mistake." Her words cut deep because they held too much truth. He'd been so young, so terrified of failing, so convinced that success required sacrificing everything else. "I was wrong," he said simply. "Catastrophically wrong." "Yes, you were." She wrapped her arms around herself, a defensive gesture he remembered from their worst fights. "But they're incredible kids, Marcus. Smart, kind, talented. They've grown up believing their father was a coward who abandoned them." The accusation hit like a physical blow. "And now? What do I tell them now?" "I don't know," Valentina said honestly. "I don't know if there's anything you can say that would matter after 15 years. Before she could say more, footsteps approached. Gabriel, clearly the protective eldest, appeared with his siblings flanking him like a small army. Marcus could see himself in the boy's determined expression, the same stubborn jaw that had gotten him through hostile takeovers. "Mom." Gabriel's voice was deeper than expected, on the verge of manhood but still carrying traces of the boy who'd grown up without a father. Is this him?" Valentina looked between Marcus and the children she'd raised alone, weighing 15 years of hurt against the possibility of healing. "Yes," she said finally, her voice steady despite tears flowing down her cheeks. "This is your father." The silence stretched impossibly long. Marcus could hear his heartbeat, smell the jasmine and roses, feel the weight of 4 pairs of eyes studying him with mixtures of curiosity, anger, and desperate hope. Sophia, who looked exactly like her mother except for Marcus's expressive green eyes, stepped forward first. She had an artist's way of seeing, tilting her head as she studied his face with the intensity of someone memorizing a subject. "You really are Dad?" she asked, her voice carrying a maturity that broke Marcus's heart. Marcus knelt to meet her at eye level, his throat tight with emotion. "Yes. And I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, but I'm hoping you'll give me a chance to explain." Luna, the youngest and most cautious, hung back behind her brothers. She had his same nervous habit of biting her lower lip, and her eyes, Valentina's warm brown eyes, were filled with wariness no 15-year-old should possess. "Why did you leave us?" she asked, barely above a whisper. The simple question shattered what remained of Marcus's composure. This wasn't a boardroom of adults who understood calculated risks. This was a child asking why her father had chosen not to love her. "Because I was scared and selfish, and I thought my work was more important than family," he said, his voice breaking. "I was wrong about everything that mattered." Dante, who'd been silent, crossed his arms in a gesture that was pure Marcus Reed. "So what changed? Why are you here now? Did you finally run out of things to buy?" The sarcasm was devastating, but Marcus recognized it as a defense mechanism. How many nights had this boy wondered about his father? How many times had he made up stories about why Marcus had left? Marcus looked up at Valentina, seeing his own pain reflected in her eyes. I've spent 15 years building something that means nothing without people to share it with. Seeing you all tonight, I realize I've been living half a life. Gabriel stepped protectively closer to his mother, and Marcus saw the man his son was becoming: strong, principled, fiercely loyal. You can't just show up and expect everything to be okay. Mom worked 2 jobs to support us. Grandma moved in to help. We managed fine without you. Each word was a deserved blow, but Marcus absorbed them without flinching. You're right. I can't undo the past, but I'd like to try to be part of your future, if you'll let me. The teenagers exchanged glances, having what appeared to be a silent conversation born of years as a tight-knit unit. Finally, Sophia spoke for all of them. We'll think about it, she said diplomatically. But you have to prove you're not going to disappear again. As the evening wound down, Marcus found himself walking with Valentina along the garden's edge while their children played soccer on the lawn. The familiar ease between them was both comforting and dangerous. They're extraordinary, he said, watching Dante execute a perfect goal while his siblings cheered. You did an amazing job raising them. Valentina's smile was soft but guarded. They raised each other as much as I raised them, having quadruplets as a single mother. There were times I didn't think we'd make it. Tell me, Marcus said quietly. Tell me what it was like. She was quiet, watching their children play in the fading light. The first 2 years were hell, she said finally. 4 babies, for different sleep schedules, for different needs. I was so exhausted I could barely think straight. My mother moved in to help, but even with 2 adults, it was overwhelming. Marcus felt guilt crash over him in waves. I should have been there. For all of it. Yes, you should have, she agreed, but her voice held less anger now. But we survived. We're stronger because of what we went through together. How did you manage financially? The money you sent helped at first, I won't lie, but I couldn't live on guilt payments forever. I finished my marketing degree through online classes, working around their nap schedules. Started freelancing when they were 3, built my own consulting business. It took 10 years, but we're comfortable now. Marcus knew from his research that comfortable was an understatement. Valentina had built one of Seattle's most successful boutique marketing firms. She'd done it all while raising 4 children alone. They walked in comfortable silence until Marcus worked up the courage to ask the question burning in his chest. Is there someone else? In your life? I mean. Valentina stopped, turning to face him with an unreadable expression. There have been a few relationships over the years. Nothing that lasted. The kids always came first, and most men weren't interested in taking on 4 teenagers who weren't their own. Their loss, Marcus said fiercely, surprised by the protective anger that flared in his chest. She studied his face in the moonlight, and for a moment, he saw a flash of the young woman who'd once loved him completely. What about you? Wife? Children you actually stuck around for? The bitter edge was warranted, but it still stung. No one serious. I convinced myself I was too focused on work, but the truth is no one ever measured up to what we had. What we had? Valentina's laugh was hollow. We had fights about money, arguments about the future, and a relationship that imploded the moment it was tested. We also had magic, Marcus said quietly, stepping closer. We had late nights planning our future, Sunday mornings in bed reading the paper, the way you laughed at my terrible jokes. We had love, Valentina. Real love. Her breath caught, and he saw her walls beginning to crack. Love wasn't enough then, Marcus. You chose your company over our family, and I've regretted it every day since. He reached out tentatively, relief flooding through him when she didn't pull away. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm hoping you'll give me one anyway. Before she could respond, Gabriel's voice called across the garden. Mom, we should probably head home. Luna has that calculus test tomorrow. The spell broke, and Valentina stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself again. I should go. Can I see you again? See them? Marcus asked urgently. Maybe we could have dinner. All of us. Valentina hesitated, and he could see the war between hope and self-protection playing out across her features. The kids deserve to know their father, she said finally. But Marcus, if you start this, you can't walk away again. They've been hurt enough. I won't walk away, he promised solemnly. Not ever again. As he watched his family climb into Valentina's modest Honda sedan, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in 15 years. a sense of purpose that had nothing to do with profit margins or market dominance. The next few weeks unfolded like a careful dance of rebuilt trust and rediscovered connections. Marcus had completely rearranged his schedule, something that sent shockwaves through his company's executive team. Board meetings were moved, investor calls rescheduled, and acquisition deals postponed. Also, he could attend Gabriel's soccer games, Luna's art exhibitions, Sophia's debate competitions, and Dante's music recitals. His assistant, Jennifer, had been working for him for 5 years and had never seen him prioritize anything over business. "Mr. Reed, the Tokyo investors are quite upset about the postponed meeting," she said nervously during their Monday briefing. "Then they'll have to stay upset," Marcus replied, not looking up from Gabriel's soccer schedule. "My son has a championship game on Thursday. That's non-negotiable." Jennifer blinked in confusion. "Your son, sir?" "Yes, Jennifer. My son. I have 4 children, actually. I'm sure that comes as a shock to everyone here, but I'm done pretending they don't exist." At Gabriel's championship game that Thursday, Marcus found himself screaming louder than any other parent when his son scored the winning goal in overtime. Gabriel jogged over afterward, sweat-soaked and grinning, his jersey grass-stained from the intense match. "Did you see that footwork in the penalty box?" Gabriel asked, still breathing hard from the game. "Coach Martinez says I've got natural field vision. He thinks I could get a college scholarship if I keep improving." "Incredible," Marcus replied, beaming with pride he'd never known he could feel. "The way you anticipated that defender's movement and adjusted your angle. That was strategic thinking at its finest. You read the field like I read market trends." Gabriel paused, studying his father's face. "You really think I'm good?" "Son, you're not just good. You're exceptional. You have a gift." A small smile tugged at Gabriel's lips, the first genuinely warm one he'd directed at Marcus. "Thanks, Dad. That actually means a lot coming from you. Can I take you and the team out for burgers to celebrate? My treat for everyone." Gabriel's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? The whole team? That would be awesome." Then his expression grew slightly serious. "But are you sure you can afford it? I mean, I know you're successful and all, but feeding 15 teenage athletes is pretty expensive." Marcus had to suppress a laugh. His son was worried about the cost of burgers when Marcus could buy the entire restaurant chain without checking his account balance. "I think I can manage it, buddy." Besides, champions deserve to celebrate properly. The burger joint was chaos, 15 teenage boys rehashing every moment of the game, talking over each other, laughing at inside jokes. Marcus sat at the end of the long table, watching Gabriel interact with his teammates, seeing leadership qualities he recognized in himself. But unlike Marcus at that age, Gabriel was kind, inclusive, making sure the quieter players felt included in the celebration. "Your dad's pretty cool," Marcus overheard one of Gabriel's teammates say. "Most parents just drop us off and leave." "Yeah," Gabriel replied, glancing at Marcus with something that might have been pride. He's trying to make up for lost time." At Luna's art exhibition the following week, Marcus stood mesmerized before her painting titled Fragments of Memory. It was an abstract piece with swirling colors that somehow managed to convey deep emotion. Longing, hope, and healing all blended together in ways that took his breath away. "I painted it after our first dinner together," Luna explained softly, appearing beside him with her hands clasped nervously behind her back. "I've always painted my feelings, and that night, I felt like maybe our family wasn't completely broken forever." "It's absolutely breathtaking," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "You captured something I didn't even know I was feeling. The way you used light and shadow to show uncertainty but also possibility." "Luna, this is professional level work." Her face glowed with pride. "You really understand it? Mom likes my paintings, but sometimes I think she just says that because she's my mom. I understand it perfectly. You have an incredible gift. Have you thought about art school? Parsons, or ISD, CalArts." Her eyes widened with longing before dimming slightly. "I'd love to go to Parsons in New York, but it's so expensive. I've been looking at community college programs, maybe part-time while I work to help Mom with expenses." Marcus felt his heart break a little more. His daughter was already limiting her dreams based on financial constraints, when he could easily fund her education at any art school in the world. But he knew he had to earn the right to help, had to prove his commitment before offering solutions. Would you like to visit some art schools together, just to see what's available? No pressure, just exploring possibilities. Luna's face brightened. You'd really do that with me? I'd love nothing more than to support your dreams, sweetheart. Sophia's debate competition was a revelation that left Marcus emotionally devastated and incredibly proud simultaneously. Watching his 15-year-old daughter argue passionately about second chances in the justice system, her eyes finding his in the audience as she spoke about redemption and the possibility of change, Marcus realized she was speaking directly to him. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sophia said, her voice carrying across the auditorium with confidence and conviction that commanded attention. "We cannot simply give up on people who have made mistakes. Yes, actions have consequences. Yes, trust must be earned through consistent behavior over time. But if we don't believe in the fundamental human capacity for growth and change, then we're essentially saying that one moment of poor judgment defines a person forever." She paused, making eye contact with each judge before continuing. "History is filled with examples of people who made terrible choices and then spent the rest of their lives making amends. Should we deny them that opportunity? Should we close the door on redemption simply because forgiveness is difficult?" After the competition, which Sophia won handily with a unanimous decision, Marcus approached her with tears in his eyes. "That was incredibly powerful," he said. Were you talking about me?" Sophia looked at him with eyes that held wisdom far beyond her 15 years. "I was talking about everyone who's ever made a choice they regretted. But yeah, I was thinking about you too. I've been researching you, your company, your success story, interviews you've given. You're not the same person who left Mom. The question is, who are you now?" "I'm trying to figure that out myself," Marcus admitted honestly. "But I know I want to be someone worthy of being your father." "Then prove it," Sophia said simply. "Not with money or grand gestures. Just by being here, consistently, even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable." Dante's music recital nearly destroyed Marcus completely. His youngest son performed an original composition titled Father's Return, each note telling the story of abandonment, longing, and tentative hope. The piece began with discordant, lonely notes that spoke of absence and confusion, then gradually built into a complex harmony that suggested healing and the possibility of family. Marcus wept openly in the front row, not caring who saw him break down. The music was hauntingly beautiful, technically sophisticated, and emotionally devastating. This 15-year-old boy had composed something that could have been performed by professional symphony orchestras. After the performance, Dante approached him hesitantly, his violin case clutched in his hands like a protective shield. Did you like it?" Dante asked, his voice uncertain despite the thunderous applause he'd just received. "It was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard," Marcus said honestly, kneeling to meet his son's eyes. "Did you really write that for me?" Dante nodded, suddenly shy. "I've been writing songs about you my whole life. Songs about wondering who you were, where you went, whether you'd ever come back. This is the first one with a happy ending. Can you teach me to play something?" Marcus asked impulsively. "I took piano lessons as a kid, but I gave it up when I decided business courses were more practical." Dante's face lit up like the sun breaking through clouds. "Really? You want to learn music? But you're so busy with important business stuff. You're more important than any business deal, son. I want to learn everything about you. All of you." But it was the stolen moments with Valentina that threatened to completely undo Marcus's carefully constructed emotional walls. The way she unconsciously leaned into him during Gabriel's championship game, her shoulder brushing his as she cheered. How her eyes lit up when he remembered she liked her coffee with vanilla and extra foam, exactly the way she'd ordered it 15 years ago. The electricity that sparked between them when their hands accidentally touched while cleaning up after family dinners was undeniable and overwhelming. They'd brush fingers reaching for the same plate, and both would freeze, caught in the magnetic pull that had never truly faded despite years of separation and hurt. One evening, after the children had gone to their rooms to study for various tests and projects, Marcus and Valentina found themselves alone on her back porch, sharing a bottle of wine and watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. The air was filled with the scent of her garden. Roses, lavender, and jasmine creating a perfume that brought back a flood of memories. "Do you remember the night we got engaged?" Valentina asked softly, her voice slightly roughened by wine and memories. Marcus smiled, his chest tight with longing. "You mean when I proposed with a ring made from a twist tie because I couldn't afford a real one yet?" "You were so nervous," she laughed, the sound like music he'd been denied for too long. "Your hands were shaking when you got down on one knee in that tiny apartment. You said we'd replace it with diamonds when your company went public. And you said you'd wear that twist tie forever if it meant having me." Marcus remembered, his voice growing thick with emotion. "I meant it too. I would have worn anything, lived anywhere, been anything you needed me to be. I loved you that much. And I threw it all away for stock options and investor meetings," Marcus said bitterly. "I was such a complete fool." Valentina was quiet for a long moment, swirling wine in her glass and watching the liquid catch the moonlight. "I used to hate you," she admitted quietly. "Especially during those first few years when I was so exhausted I could barely think straight. For babies, Marcus. For crying, needing, demanding little beings who depended on me for absolutely everything. I can't imagine how impossibly hard it must have been. There were nights I cried myself to sleep wondering what I'd done wrong, why I wasn't enough to make you stay, why our love wasn't stronger than your ambition." Her voice broke slightly. "It took years of therapy to realize it wasn't about me not being enough. It was about you being too young and scared to handle real responsibility." Marcus set down his wine and turned to face her fully. "You were everything to me, Valentina. You still are. I was just too stupid and terrified to see what I was throwing away. And now," she whispered, her carefully constructed defenses finally beginning to crumble. "What do you see when you look at me now? I see the woman I should have married properly the first time around. I see the mother who raised four incredible human beings completely alone. I see my future, if you'll have me. If you can somehow find it in your heart to forgive me." The space between them seemed to shrink as years of suppressed longing and unresolved feelings surfaced like a dam breaking. When Marcus reached up to cup her face gently, she leaned into his touch like a flower turning toward the sun after a long winter. "I'm scared," she admitted, her lips barely an inch from his. "I can't go through losing you again. I barely survived it the first time." "You won't lose me," he promised, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "I'm not the same man who walked away. Having you all in my life again, it's changed everything about who I am and what I want." When their lips finally met, it was like coming home after a lifetime of wandering in the wilderness. The kiss was soft at first, tentative and questioning, then deeper as 15 years of separation dissolved in the space between heartbeats. Marcus tasted wine and forgiveness on her lips, felt the walls around his heart finally, completely crumble. They broke apart breathless, foreheads touching as they held each other in the starlight. "The kids will have opinions about this," Valentina murmured against his lips. Marcus chuckled softly. "They've been pushing us together for weeks. Gabriel asked me yesterday when I was going to make it official with their mom." "Smart boy." Valentina's smile was radiant, transforming her entire face. "He gets that strategic thinking from his father." As autumn faded into winter, the Reed family settled into a rhythm that felt both completely new and wonderfully familiar. Marcus had sold his sterile penthouse and bought a sprawling house in the same neighborhood as Valentina, with enough bedrooms for everyone and a backyard perfect for family gatherings. The house hunting had been an adventure in itself. Marcus had initially looked at mansions that could accommodate his wealth and status, but Valentina had gently steered him towards something more appropriate for an actual family. "We don't need a house that requires a staff of 12, Valentina had said, laughing as they toured a 20,000-square-foot monstrosity in an exclusive gated community. "We need a home where the kids can be kids, where we can have family dinners without shouting across a dining room the size of a basketball court." They'd settled on a beautiful 6-bedroom colonial with a wraparound porch, a kitchen big enough for chaotic family meals, and a backyard where Gabriel could practice soccer while Luna painted in the garden studio Marcus had built for her. Christmas morning arrived with a blanket of fresh snow and the kind of beautiful chaos that only comes with 4 teenagers and mountains of carefully chosen presents. Marcus had gone slightly overboard. 15 years of missed Christmases had resulted in enough gifts to stock a small toy store. "Dad, you know we're not 5 anymore, right?" Sophia teased, holding up her 10th wrapped package. Though I have to admit, I've always wanted a professional debate research subscription and these law books. Luna was practically vibrating with excitement over the art supplies Marcus had commissioned from her favorite specialty store. These are genuine Kolinsky sable brushes. Do you know how expensive these are? And this easel is exactly like the ones at Parsons. Money well spent if they help you create more masterpieces, Marcus replied, watching his daughter's face glow with pure joy. Gabriel had been thrilled with the latest soccer equipment and training gear, but it was Dante's gift that moved everyone to tears. Marcus had arranged for private lessons with the Seattle Symphony's principal violinist, along with a violin crafted by one of the world's master luthiers. "This is a real Guarneri reproduction," Dante whispered, running his fingers reverently over the instrument. "I've only seen violins like this in museums and concert halls." "Every artist deserves the finest tools," Marcus said. "Your music is too beautiful for anything less than the best." When all the children's gifts had been opened and wrapping paper covered every surface of the living room, Marcus handed Valentina a small velvet box that made her gasp audibly. Inside was everything he'd promised all those years ago, a ring with diamonds that caught the light like captured stars, the setting an exact replica of the ring they designed together when they were young and broke and madly in love. "Will you marry me?" he asked, dropping to one knee in front of the Christmas tree while their children watched with delighted grins and tears in their eyes. "Will you give me the chance to be the husband I should have been 15 years ago?" Valentina's eyes filled with tears as she nodded enthusiastically. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, of course, you beautiful fool." But when she accepted his proposal, she also slipped the original twist tie onto her pinky finger. She'd kept it all these years, through all the heartbreak and struggle and sleepless nights. "For good luck," she said with a smile that stopped his heart completely. "And to remind us that love doesn't need to be expensive to be real." "You kept it?" Marcus asked, amazed and deeply moved. "I kept everything that reminded me of the man I fell in love with," she admitted. "Even when I hated you, even when I wanted to forget you existed, I never stopped loving who you were before fear made you forget what truly mattered." Their wedding the following spring was exactly what Marcus had never known he wanted, but turned out to be perfect. Instead of the elaborate society affair his wealth could have easily afforded, they chose a small, intimate ceremony in Mrs. Patterson's garden, where their second chance had miraculously begun. The morning of the wedding, Marcus stood in his childhood bedroom at his mother's house, adjusting his tie for the 10th time. His hands were shaking not from nerves about the ceremony itself, but from overwhelming gratitude that he was getting this chance at redemption at all. "You clean up nice, son." His mother, Elizabeth, appeared in the doorway wearing the navy dress she'd bought specially for the occasion. At 72, she was still sharp as a tack and had not hesitated to express her strong opinions about Marcus's 15-year absence from his children's lives. "Are you proud of me, Mom?" Marcus asked, suddenly feeling like a little boy again seeking approval. Elizabeth Reed studied her son's face carefully, seeing the man he'd become rather than the scared young fool who'd walked away from love. "I'm proud of who you are today," she said finally. "But I'm even prouder that you found the courage to fight for what you'd lost." At the ceremony, Gabriel walked his mother down the garden path, while Sophia, Luna, and Dante served as the wedding party. Mrs. Patterson had outdone herself with decorations. White roses climbed every available surface, string lights twinkled in the trees like stars, and the scent of jasmine filled the air with romance. As Marcus watched his bride approach through a shower of apple blossoms, her dress flowing in the gentle breeze, he understood that true success wasn't measured in market cap or quarterly profits. It was measured in stolen kisses over morning coffee, in children's laughter echoing through the halls, in building a life that mattered with the people you loved most. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, for teenagers cheered louder than anyone, finally having the complete family they'd always deserved. As the sun set on their wedding day, Marcus held his wife close and looked around at their children, their friends, their new beginning. He'd spent 15 years building an empire, but tonight he'd finally built something that would last forever. A family bound not just by blood, but by choice, forgiveness, and the radical decision to love despite past mistakes. Some love stories get a second chance. The lucky ones make it count. If this story touched your heart about the power of second chances and choosing love over ambition, please hit that like button and subscribe to Lux Love Chronicles for more powerful stories about redemption, forgiveness, and finding your way home. Share in the comments below if you believe it's never too late to choose family over fortune. And remember, true wealth isn't what you accumulate, but who you love and who loves you back. Until next time, this is Mr. Wentworth reminding you that the greatest investment you can make is in the people who matter most. Sweet dreams, beautiful family.